Living frugally is a great way to get your spending under control and set a base to improve your personal finances. However, what's the point of cutting every expense and possibly retiring early if you aren't able to put the money to good use on the things you enjoy in life? Tanja Hester is the writer behind the blog Our Next Life and the new book Work Optional, and she's joining us to share her views on how we can be selectively hardcore in our money-saving ways, but be able to spend on quality items or experiences that align with our priorities. Welcome to the MapleMoney Show, the podcast that helps Canadians improve their personal finances to create lasting financial freedom. You may soon find yourself with a big tax refund burning a hole in your pocket. How should you spend it? The smartest thing you can do is invest it. In fact, put it right into your RSP and get a jump start on your contributions. As a MapleMoney reader, get $10,000 managed for free when you open a new account or transfer your existing RSP to our sponsor, Wealthsimple. Go to MapleMoney.com/Wealthsimple today. Now let's chat with Tanja. Hi, Tanja. Welcome to the MapleMoney Show.
Hey, Tom. Thanks for having me.
So I was going through your blog, and one of the things I noticed, and it sounds like Jonathan from Choose FI came up with this term, was selectively hardcore about frugality. And I really sort of resonated with this because I think I do the same. I can rarely buy clothes, but then I can spend money on travel or I'll say it right now. I think maybe I've said it on the podcast before. But my big expense ever was I put a home theater in my basement, like a full on, like multi-level seating and projectors. So it's I get the idea that you spend on what you want, but you can still cut other places. Is that sort of how you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there are some people who love being frugal in every way and view it almost as a hobby or a lifestyle. And for those folks, that's great. But I think that that's not most of us.
Yeah.
Most of us work hard and make money and want to be able to put that money toward things that we enjoy. And so the idea of not spending on something that you could technically afford, I think is tough. And so I really recommend, and that's why I put non-penny pinching in the subtitle of the book, is thinking about not how you can be frugal in every way possible, but how you can really just cut the stuff out of your life that doesn't add value to you. And to your question, the selectively hardcore, we're sort of known. It's funny to me that we're known for this because Mark and I are really not very frugal. And I think that we're pretty unfrugal, especially among folks who are in the early retirement kind of community. But we're known for keeping our house really cold. And we keep it at 55 degrees Fahrenheit, 13 degrees Celsius. And it's really cold. I'm not going to lie. Like, it's very uncomfortable if you're not used to it. But we kind of built up to that. And we just decided, we got our first heat bill when we moved from LA to Tahoe. And it was really, really high. It was like hundreds of dollars. And we said, we're not going to pay that bill every single month in the winter. So how cold can we get it? And it turns out that 55, 13 degrees was the answer of what we could stand before we started to feel miserable. 54, 1 degree lower, that was too cold and we were shivering. But 55 we could do. We bundle up. We wear a lot of fleece in the house. We have slippers on at all times. Often we have our hoods up, which I don't have because we're on video. But yeah, that sort of became our thing. And it's sort of, to me, like not even financial anymore. It's just sort of like a way to toughen up a little bit and to practice a little bit of stoicism, a little bit of being uncomfortable for the sake of being better as people. And it's just a nice side effect that it also saves money and of course saves energy, which is big. We care about the environment. So not burning extra fossil fuels is a good thing too.
Yeah, here in Celsius, room temperature would be 20, 21. And I've always done the sort of advice is try to lower it 1 degree. Lowering it 7 or 8 degrees would be tough for me, I think.
But you can work up to it. You can do one at a time.
It's actually interesting because I know I can survive this because my office here is in the basement and I've got Nest sensors around the house. And right now it says I'm at 14 degrees. So it's actually almost the same. And normally, yes, I would also be wearing a sweater, and I have on this show too. but I don't want to keep wearing the same sweater every episode. So I'm not, don't have it on now, but yeah, so it's cold, but it's doable.
Yeah, and for folks who think that it sounds kind of crazy that we're doing that, I think a good way to try it is similar to how you might think about spending. It's not about cutting back everything at once. It's like, can you tighten your belt one notch at a time? So turn it down 1 degree, live with that for a month, see if you can do 1 degree more, live with that. I know a lot of couples have thermostat wars, and so like I don't want to get in the middle of that. But it can be a good exercise to just see if you can stretch your comfort zone a little bit.
Yeah, and I no, my basement's actually cold just because it's the basement and it's winter. On the main floor, it's about room temperature. But I do find having that nest does help make it a bit of a game. They give you a little eco leaf when you when the weather's or the temperature's a little bit better. So I do try to get that eco leaf when I can, and then it starts to program itself that way as a smart thermostat that it'll just go and start keeping those temperatures if you're always setting them to that. So this is obviously sort of I would assume the most extreme frugality you do. Is there other spots in your spending where you're sort of finding ways where you can save money?
Yeah, I think our life doesn't look like a very frugal life. And I think anyone who saw us out living it would not think that we are super frugal, because again, we're really not. But what we've done is we've focused on cutting out expenses that don't add value to our lives, and we still let ourselves spend money on the things that do, that we find ways to try to make them cheaper. So, for example, we spent 3 weeks in France last fall. France is known for being pretty expensive.
Yeah.
Obviously, you go there, you can travel hack all you want, but you're still going to end up spending a good chunk of money. And we did, but we also went in November. So we went off peak. We went when Airbnbs and hotels were really inexpensive, when rental cars were really inexpensive. And we were able to have a really lovely experience with only a few differences because it was off peak time. When we went to the beach in Nice, we weren't swimming, we were walking at the beach because it was chilly, but that's fine. We don't need to swim in the Mediterranean. We're not like beach people. So that worked for us. And then we looked at some other destinations last year, like we went to Mexico and Taiwan, which are both pretty inexpensive and are really wonderful to travel in. So absolutely, travel is something we spend on, but we look for ways to kind of bring it down. We don't go at peak times. We don't have 3 trips in a year that are all to really expensive destinations. We might have 1 expensive trip a year and 2 cheaper ones, something like that. But then we looked at whole categories. So like we haven't had cable in, we think, about 7 years. We were trying to remember that just earlier today. We don't really buy a lot of new clothes. When we do, we shop, very discount. I'm a big fan of things like TJ Maxx or Sierra.com, which is more markdown outdoor wear. If we buy new sporting gear, which we do a fair amount because we live here in Lake Tahoe where it's mountainous, we can ski and mountain bike and do all that stuff. We definitely buy secondhand with everything. And some things too, like if you love to ski, but you don't live near skiing, skiing is really expensive because if you don't have a season pass, I think passes in the US, the resorts are up to almost $200 a day, whereas we pay $600 for the whole season. And so you could easily take a family on a ski trip and spend $10,000 or more, where we're not paying for lodging on the mountain because we're 20 minutes from it, and we're spending 600 for the whole season. So skiing is actually a very economical thing to do in that way if we ski a lot. So things like that, where it doesn't feel frugal to us, we're getting to do things that feel really adventurous, but we've found a lot of ways to make them pretty inexpensive.
Going back to that travel idea, I love traveling off season, and it's not just about saving money. It's sometimes just nicer. Like we're a family of 4. We've got 2 children. So we'll go somewhere like Disneyland. There's nothing worse than going during the summer. You're paying more. You're not enjoying it. And then in just this last January, we went to Mexico right after, I think it was January 2nd. So everybody was leaving from their Christmas trips and their New Year's Eve trips. And it's like we had the resort to ourselves. And I got a great deal on it because of that.
Yeah, if you're able to travel in November, December up through like right before Christmas and then January after New Year's, those are like the most magical times to go almost everywhere. Unless it's a ski destination or something. Like if you're trying to ski in Japan, January is a little more expensive, but everywhere else, yeah, that's like the big secret.
Yeah, and I didn't even really fully realize that. I was just looking for a trip, and I got a really good deal. It's only once I got to the resort and literally met people there that were leaving after New Year's Eve, that I realized like the place was down. I think they said it was a third of full,
Wow.
so 2/3 of the resort was empty, and it made it a lot easier to do things. You could get in the pool, you could get drinks, you could get on excursions easier.
Mhm.
Everything was just way more available. And being where we are in Canada, it's nice to go to Mexico in January. It's a nice break in the weather.
Yeah.
One more thing I wanted to go back to was you mentioned not having cable for 7 years.
Hmm.
Now I don't want to watch a lot of TV, but I do need some. Do you guys have Netflix or anything like that?
Oh yeah, I don't mean to sound like we're some anti-TV people at all. We have a Roku box, and through that we get Netflix and Hulu, and then we have like a, I don't know if I should admit this, we have like a stolen HBO Now password. It's from someone who used our Netflix password for a bunch of years, so we feel like we're just like evening out the karma on that.
It's shared. It's not stolen.
Yeah, there you go. Exactly. It was shared willingly.
Yes. It's not I know people that have like the Android boxes that can stream everything possible. So that's probably more stolen. This is just a shared account.
No, I fully respect artists' rights and copyright. We don't steal any content, but we are mooching off a friend's HBO.
I remember before all these digital accounts, people would actually get additional satellite dishes, like even the little pizza-sized ones that you could get another dish and share an account because you couldn't really see where the signals were coming from. So that everybody's still getting paid. It's just you've got a box in a totally different house.
Huh.
Less necessary now. Now everything's online.
Mhm.
Another thing I want to go over. So we talked about some of the places where you are cutting, but another thing you mentioned that I really like is sort of the idea of quality over junk. Um,
Mhm.
our mutual friend JD Roth just got a lot of hassle over this, and I keep perpetuating it myself just to bug him. But he bought pajamas for $80, just pajama pants for $80, and he assumes that they're going to be good enough that they'll last forever. I don't know, but what are your thoughts on quality over junk, and maybe some examples where you make that decision?
Yeah, I'm just thinking about if I would ever spend $80 on pajama pants. That
Oh,
would
I
be
know.
tough for me.
I was
Um,
bugging him. We were just together not just last month, and I pulled out my I think $25 pajamas or something that I got at Costco. I'm like, these are pretty good quality. I think they're going to last. So we might have a competition going now to see who gets holes first, or
yeah,
something pulling apart because we bought them around the same time.
keep us all posted on that. The pajama pants competition. Um, I think that we definitely take the view of trying to buy quality for a couple reasons. One is we just don't want to put a lot of stuff in the landfill. Like I understand right now, KonMari, Marie Kondo, the whole tidying up thing is very popular. Most of the stuff that you're donating to charity is ending up in landfills. Hate to say it, but
Oh, really?
yeah, that's the truth. And so we try to be really intentional that like we don't want to just view, okay, I can drop that at the thrift store as the way that we dispose of things. We try to think about like how can I get as much use out of something as possible,
Mhm.
knowing that most often you're just delaying the process of it getting thrown away by a couple days. So again, like $80 pajama pants, I probably wouldn't do. I'm mostly just saying that to antagonize JD because he's a friend. But no, like I do think it's worth spending on things that truly add to your quality of life. So I'll give you an example for us. Like you talked about home theater before for you, which makes, I'm sure, gives you a ton of joy and makes your life better because you have this amazing setup. We spent a fairly extravagant amount of money on our sofa. But we practically live there. And so it's super comfortable. It's really durable. It's made of hardwood. It was made in the US. Like it's really good fabric that our dogs don't rip up, all of that stuff. And it's going to last us forever. And that is something that feels so much better than like going and buying the cheap couch at IKEA, which is less comfortable, less durable. It's going to require you to toss it and get a new one at some
Yeah.
point. I'd rather buy something that's more expensive, but which you can buy once. And especially if it's something more comfortable, like something that adds value. I see a lot of people, for example, who work from home sitting in really cheap office chairs. And I'm like, how is your back going to feel in 5 or 10 years after sitting in that piece of crap chair? Like, yes, good office chairs are expensive, but isn't that worth your back not hurting?
Yeah.
Things like that. I think just looking at what is the value that something adds, what is not just, the kind of happiness stuff, like something adding fun is good, but also does it keep you healthier? Does it make you more comfortable? Does it make something easier that you do a lot that really improves your life? To me, those are things that are worth spending on. And not that you want to spend tons on everything, but just prioritize the things that are most important, or spread those purchases out. So you're making, 1 or 2 big purchases a year that are really high priority.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And you mentioned the idea that sort of buying things that'll last. I may have the home theater and I've set up my office pretty nicely, but in general, so much of my furniture is from the mid '90s. I was a teenager at the time. I've still got my same. Thought I was a big cool adult, but I was still a teenager. Bedroom furniture, and I've got my parents' couch from the mid '90s, and it's lasted. It's probably due for replacement, but I'm having a hard time replacing it, especially having young kids. We bought a new kitchen table, and it's already scratched up. It's got some scuff marks on it, and I say to my wife every time she's like, "We need a new couch." I'm like, "No," because look what happens when we buy stuff. It's so especially with kids, it seems like we're probably just gonna wait as long as possible, because right now, if we buy something, it's gonna have a very short life of like 2 or 3 years for furniture, just at the rate they're destroying things. So
I think that's smart. I think maybe waiting until they're at a slightly less destructive age wouldn't be the worst thing.
yeah,
And two, like we live in a world where manufacturers and marketers make it hard to find quality. Like I laugh. My favorite rebranding in recent years is I'm putting air quotes around it, vegan leather. Uh, Vegan leather is polyurethane, which is plastic. And it's amazing how much stuff online now is called vegan leather, which makes it sound responsible when it's like, this is plastic that's going to degrade on you and fall apart and break and be terrible and end up in the landfill. Like the number of couches that are covered in vegan leather is really high. And that's stuff that like your kids will trash instantly because it's low quality.
yeah.
So, I think waiting until they're slightly less destructive is probably good. But then, yeah, like if you like leather, buying leather or buying a really good, strong fabric. But that does take more work as a consumer. You can't just go in and say like, oh, this is pretty, I'll take this. So it's a little bit like all the money stuff that goes along with this, just being intentional with what you want to bring into your life and what you don't. But yeah, no shame keeping the older furniture for a little while.
Yeah, I think we have to. Another thing I know you mentioned before was this idea of with fire, which we've talked about on this show before. Is sort of, what are you retiring to? And your angle on it was more about, are you going to be bored? But in addition to being bored, I think we can bring the spending back into that too, because we talked about this sort of idea that a lot of people have of fire, that it means you need to be super frugal and not spend. And sure, there are people that like it, but I think that there's also even more people that it probably turns off when they don't want to live that way. So what are your thoughts along this idea? Like, so someone's retiring early, or maybe they're just even retiring at a normal age. It's just what are they retiring to? Like, do they want to be? Do they want to be too bored? Do they want to be able to spend and maybe do something with it with their time?
Yeah. Oh, I want to respond to so many different things in that. I mean,
Sorry.
no, it's good. I started out the book actually with a chapter or 3 chapters. With part 1 is really about looking at the life you actually want to live, because I do think that there's a tendency when people learn about early retirement or fire. I don't actually like the term fire, but we'll just go with that because that's what everyone else says. When people learn about that, they get really excited. They start building their spreadsheet. They look at how much they can save, and that's often very motivating. But I think most of us tend to come at it from I can't wait to quit work, sort of the like burn the last place down and march out of there triumphantly image. They don't necessarily picture, okay, what am I actually going to do with my time? What will life actually look like? And I think it's really important to think about that stuff even more than the money piece. And particularly if you're in a marriage or a committed relationship, doing a lot of that with your partner and not just doing spreadsheets together, but actually creating your life vision, I think is super important so you don't end up bored. I think a lot of us who are drawn to early retirement are people who have many, many interests and aren't really at risk of being bored. But it's still very easy to let days slip by doing nothing when you have no one forcing any external structure on your life. So making sure that you feel like your days add up to something does take some planning and some thought. And that's really, again, what part one of the book is about. But I think I think the other side of it of not being super frugal and thinking about the life part is just once you have that vision, it helps motivate you to save and to make different choices in your life so that if you know exactly what you want to do, it's so much easier to say like, oh, I don't need that thing. I can live without it. Whereas when you're just seeing how hard you're working at work and how miserable it might be making you or whatever it might be, you think, I deserve this thing because I worked so hard and it's, I'm taking the work stress home with me. So it really does, I think, change your whole point of view on it and make it easier to make different financial decisions when you know what you're aiming for.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of people with full-time jobs and like you said, they take that stress of the job and then they basically spend it all. It becomes this constant thing where they're feeling that they need to do something, right? They need to go out for drinks with their coworkers. They need to travel during their vacation time. Everything's sort of a forced thing by then.
And I mean, I can relate to that. That was what Mark and I did for a long time. We had very high stress careers. We worked a ton of hours, had to be reachable around the clock. And yeah, we thought we should reward ourselves for that. But as soon as we saw what was possible and how quickly we could exit that traditional path, it was amazing how much that changed our whole mindset and how instantly it was like, oh, do we need all of that? And I think too, it helps to remember that none of this is all or nothing. So it's not like saying, okay, well, you can go to happy hour and eat at restaurants and take trips and buy new clothes, or you do none of that. I mean, that's just a false choice. It's more about calibrating. So maybe you just do all of that, but you do it less, or you say, okay, of all of that, the thing that's important to me is travel. Happy hour I can lose, clothes I don't care about. So it's really about, I think, just figuring out what you value both in life and financially, and then letting that drive your decisions.
Nice. I like this. There's a nice balance to this. It's you don't have to be poor, but you don't have to wait till 65 to retire. So this has been great. I loved going through all this. Can you tell people about your book? It just released this year, so let everyone know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called Work Optional, Retire Early, the Non-Penny Pinching Way. For those watching on video, showing a picture of it. It's very pretty. It's a guide to how you can make work a smaller part of your life and to be really intentional about what role you want work to play. So I talk about how to pursue full early retirement, how to semi-retire, which is in truth what a lot of people pursuing early retirement end up doing because they end up working some, and generally not because they have to, but because they find something that they really enjoy. Like I wrote the book and that paid a little bit of money, but it was a cool opportunity and I've always wanted to write a book. So that was something that just felt really fortuitous. I also talk about career intermission of being able to take a break of, let's say, a year, maybe once every 10 years, once every 5 years, whatever that looks like, but giving people different options for how they can save, how they can create a life in which work plays a smaller role, and then ultimately how you can live a life that feels really purposeful and meaningful, because that's what this is all about. This is about living your best life. And that's why I'm so kind of against the absolute frugality trend or the judging people for certain expenditures, like the stories that went around last year about millennials can't buy houses because they eat avocado toast. I'm like,
Yeah.
if you love avocado toast, why are we going to shame you for that? As long as you aren't buying avocado toast at restaurants every day and driving like the latest sports car and buying a big house, like let people have things they enjoy. And so I think of it as a very modular, choose your own adventure kind of approach to early retirement and a work optional life that lets you decide what you value, how fast you want to save, how fast or slow you want to get there, and what that life ultimately looks like.
Great. Well, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks to Tanja for showing us that you don't have to pinch every penny to become financially independent. You can find the show notes for this episode at MapleMoney.com/Tanja Hester, or head over to MapleMoney.com/show to catch all the past episodes. Tanja wanted one lucky listener to get a free copy of her book, Work Optional, Retire Early the Non-Penny Pinching Way. For your chance to win the book, head over to MapleMoney.com/giveaway today, as the contest is over on March 20th. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you back here next week.